I'm with Elizabeth Lovius today, who I met during a webinar about a year ago where you were talking about intuition. So I'm really keen to hear about your practice of self-awareness, self-development, and how that's impacted your life. Let's first find out a little bit about you. So can you give us an overview of what you do, how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, so I work with leaders in business and I work with teams, organisations. And we were talking about this earlier, and I think the best way you can really say it is I help them be more insightful. So that means to me that they have more access to their creativity, good ideas, knowing what to do, but also insight into how to work together more effectively, what the best course of action is in any given moment, and fundamentally how to enjoy the experience, that whatever they're in, how that experience can be more enjoyable and engaging for people. So that's what I do with leaders. But really what I want to say is, yes, I work a lot in the business world and I understand that, but really I'm just working with human beings. And that's, if there's a kind of strapline of my work, it's called being human, understanding being human. Because whatever roles or titles or contexts we find ourselves in, we're always human first. How do you bring people with you? How do you engage hearts and minds? What's going on there? And that's really been my career for the last 30 years, is engaging with that question, but in the context of whatever business or leader that I'm working with in their particular context. Intellectual sense doesn't mean anything, doesn't change behaviour. Because if that was true, nobody would be smoking and we'd all listen to our mothers at good advice. There's something else at play, right? It's not just the information.
And is that something else connected to this principle of insights?
Yeah, I would say 100%.
How or why did you get involved in this work specifically? Was there a course that you studied? Was there something that happened in your life? Tell us about that.
I came across something called the principles of insight. And really, when I started to look in that direction, two things happened. I kind of got a very settled, calm feeling of coming home to what I knew to be true and what was true, which was incredibly liberating, calming, clarifying. So that was awesome. And then at the same time, completely took the rug out from under me, because what I was learning was something that didn't involve process or techniques or approaches. It involved listening on a deeper level than I'd ever listened before. And yet it was strangely familiar. So it felt all at once a completely new way of being, and in another way, completely familiar. Insight comes from within, inside. You know, the place where our inner knowing lives, our inner wisdom, you said, intuition, all of that is an inside job. Something resonates almost in an embodied way. Yeah, so that's really what I've been studying for the last 5 years for myself, but also in my work. And where it's left me now is just a lot, so free, and so knowing what I can trust, and also to seeing that there's truly nothing to fix and nothing to change, even when it really looks like there is. And that's all part of the nature of human experience, that what we think is true, what we believe to be true, we make true. So if we believe there's something to fix, something's wrong, we make it true. And really, when you take a step back and you detach yourself from your beliefs, which is almost impossible. We live in a world of belief, and most of it looks solid and real, and we don't question it because it's solid and real. But really, the truth is, everything is made up. So if everything's made up, well, what do you listen to then? What do you listen to as truth? So that's really what I got interested in. To not a technique or a process, but an understanding of the principles of insight.
You said something there about feeling like the rug had been pulled from beneath your feet. at that point at which you had a real shift in your own learning. And I'm wondering what that was like for you, if you can put yourself back into that place of feeling like the rug had been pulled from your feet. What was it like, and how did you find solid ground again?
So the rug that was pulled out was the rug of that I know something about how to get people from A to B, that I know what's going on for someone else, or that I know how something's going to work out. So, and growing up in a process improvement world, it's all about creating certainty through your process. So that, understandably, I was looking for how do you create certainty in the process of processing human beings. So what the rug got pulled out is that you don't process human beings, because human beings are not a process. I mean, you could say life and death is a process, but every journey is different, as we all know, from the life to the death. They're the process. And then the bit in the middle is up for grabs, as we all know. So that is not a process. There is no one size fits all. So I had to look in a different direction for what was true then. I had to look at something that was deeper, beyond the form, before the form, energy. My best example of this would be going to a restaurant. We've all been to loads of restaurants. We walk in, they follow the same process. They sit you down, take your order, bring your food. The process is always more or less the same process, but the feeling of that process is completely different depending where you're going. So the answer to experience doesn't just lie in the form. There's something that's giving life to that form, energy. And then we give it all sorts of labels, attitude, or whatever we call it. But really it's a feeling. It's a feeling that when a friend introduces a new friend to you. Someone's got a friend and they introduce, and you meet them, and you get this feeling straight away. And sometimes you get, we're going to be friends feeling. It's all there. It's already all there. The information is already all there. So when I got the rug pulled out, I really started to see that my forms or my formulas, the magic didn't live in them. It didn't live in those forms or formulas or the intellectual side of things. So it felt more ephemeral to me. Where did the magic lie then? It didn't seem to be in my control, which is quite a frightening thought. Because if it's out of my control, what does that mean? So that's quite destabilizing. So there was a period of time where I was left shore of what I used to do, but hadn't found a new shore, was out in the open seas and felt quite buffeted by, well, where is the solid ground for me? And even though it was confusing, and even though I didn't know what I could hold on to, I knew that I was going in the right direction.
How did you know that?
Because I did know that I knew what was true when I heard it. I did know that I had the capacity to hear the truth and to know the truth of our experience and life. I did know that I had the capacity to know what was true. Now, then what would happen is I would have a whole lot of other things come in. But what about this? But what about that? But what about, and what about this exception? And so, for example, I would hear, we make our experience. Everything that happens is created in our own minds through our own thoughts. We create our experience. And I'd go, I know that's true. I'd feel the truth of that. And then I'd go, but what about when my two boys fight? And, when clients trash the situation and do that thing, what about those? Because those are real. I didn't make those happen. So then I would get into a debate. And when you get into that kind of debate, you take yourself away from what's true. And you end up in a debate. And a debate is basically an intellectual engagement. It involves a right and a wrong and a good and a bad and a business case on this side and a business case on that side. And that's what we like to do down the pub with our mates, when we talk about Brexit or whatever. We have a debate. Debates rarely change anything. They're like a workout, but they don't change your mind normally. I mean, occasionally you might hear something, but on the whole, a debate seems to entrench positions further and create more opportunity to justify your own. And that's the same with the debate in your own head. It's exactly the same. I used to be in the debating club, by the way, when I was a kid. So I really liked debating. But the debating, when it came to truth, wasn't helpful. It was helpful for other things, but not for truth, and not for what really is true for all human beings. Because what it started to look like to me was debating was the gift of different perspectives engaging with each other. And there are 7 billion different perspectives on the planet, so you can debate with anybody about anything. So nothing wrong with debating. It's just not where truth lives. Truth lives in a calmer, clearer place. When I started to get a feel for the difference between an intellectual debate I might be having with myself or with someone else, and that deeper feeling of truth, which didn't seem to have words, but just resonated, that's when I started to get a feel for solid ground and where to look. And that feeling is a feeling we all are born with, knowing. It's not something, which is why I love the name of your podcast, Conversations with My Younger Self, or Listening to My Younger Self, because your younger self was that. And the further back you go, the more you were it. Our younger selves are in the moment, are listening in. And before 7, don't have a lot of intellectual argument. They're in flow. We're in flow, being our true selves. So your true self, in my opinion, isn't a place to get to. It's something you already are that might be concealed by a lot of internal debate. That might be what's making it seem like it's not there. Mm. But when the debate falls away, what's left is you.
You said something around detaching from your beliefs and how you realised that you needed to detach from your beliefs, but then you also said detaching from your beliefs is practically impossible. How have you done that? What does that mean?
I learned quite early on, probably I was really young, 19, and I got sent on one of these trainings from IBM, and it was called Detach, and it was all about whatever you think you can make real. So it was the Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich model of, positive thinking, really. And I really saw that, and I took that on. But I took it on like a belief, like it was right and true, and I beat everyone over the head with it, my poor family. And then every time I came across a new ideology, that would become my new belief. And I would integrate it all, so it would sort of soften over time. But I think in my early 30s, I started to really see the made-up nature of experience. Like I started to see that there was what was so, the neutral existence of whatever is happening right now, and then what we made it mean. And that there was an infinite ways of making something mean something. So I really started to see that was true for myself. And then I started to see the construct of beliefs. If you take a step back and you look at the civilizations over the centuries, you start to see that each civilization had its own belief system. It was good to throw babies in fires to appease the gods, was true in that world. And you would have thought that were true, and I would have thought that were true if we had been brought up. Whatever the cultural context of your life, you don't have any awareness of it as a cultural context. It just is that way. Inside of that system, it makes 100% sense. And I think that is the nature of belief, is that we get born into it. It's not something we have chosen. It's something that it pre-exists and we just adapt to. It's the water the fish swims in. Fish doesn't know it's in water. And then over time, we start to realize some things we used to believe we don't believe anymore. So we start to kind of let go of some of our beliefs. Like, I guess you don't think Santa's going to drop a present under the tree for you Christmas Eve anymore, but you probably did when you were 6, So you start to wake up to the idea that not everything that is true. we start to get this idea that there are some things that we thought were true, and then we discover that they're not. And then what I started to realize is that actually everything is up for grabs. Everything. And more than that, my thinking changes on a day-to-day basis. I had a really interesting experience with a girlfriend who I had decided in my head, I believed, had not been as interested in my life and supportive when she knew that I was going through a difficult time. So I had some thinking about her, right? Some beliefs about whether or not she was a good friend, and how maybe I needed to end that friendship because, la, la, la. And the more I thought about it, the more real it looked. And I was even convincing my husband, that friendship, that's really on the outs. It's clearly not two-way. And then I went around and saw her because we hadn't been able to make time. And it was the most wonderful thing, because as soon as I walked in, I was like, oh, yeah, that was all shit thinking. That had no relationship with reality. This is what's real. This person in front of me is what's real. And I really saw the power of just how thinking created who she was. But when I got into reality with physically being with her, suddenly all that thinking dropped away. And the thing is, whilst you're in the thinking, whilst you're believing your thoughts to be true, it is real. That friend is letting you down. That isn't a concept. That's reality. So when I say it's really hard to detach from your beliefs, it's really hard to even see them as beliefs. They just look real. And that's the power of the neutral power of thought that everyone has, this huge, incredible power to think and to experience. Each individual thought is given life by our level of consciousness in the moment. And we can have low levels of consciousness or high levels. And when we're in a low level of consciousness, it's kind of like a low mood, low feeling mood. And have you noticed that when you're in a low mood, everything looks shit? Not just that person who pissed you off, but suddenly you look shit, your life looks shit, the house. Everything is suddenly coloured by this dark grey level of consciousness. But you don't realise that. We think it's real. And that's the nature of these kind of hidden principles behind what creates our experience, because thought is temporary. But when you have it and you attach to it, it looks real and permanent. So in a low mood, I could have a thought, what am I doing with my life? I'm not doing what I should be doing with my life, for example. I've had that thought, right? And then it doesn't look like a thought anymore. It looks like I don't know what I'm doing with my life, and I need to fix that right now. Or I need to do something to change that because I don't like the feeling of confusion and slightly like guilt, or I don't know what it is, that I'm not fulfilling my potential. So then what we do is we create a huge big story that gives life to that thought and makes it real. Innocently. We don't mean to do that. That's just how it works. It's almost like there's something else running the show, not us. We're just kind of watching the show. But then that thought comes in. And then for the duration that we think that thought and believe that thought, it's real. And then we go on a little mental holiday, or we do the washing up, or we go literally talk to someone else, and we suddenly come back to that thought and go, oh, what was I thinking? No longer looks real. And suddenly you're like, of course I know what I'm doing with my life. I was on track all along. And actually, if I join the dots backward, I can see the perfection of all things. Nothing has changed out there, but your belief or your thought has changed. So why it's difficult to detach completely from beliefs is most of the time we don't even know that our experience is created from our belief and thought in that moment.
What have been the biggest challenges that you've faced through learning what you've learned and integrating it into your life?
One of the things that I had as a hidden blind spot was the idea that somehow I needed to be perfect, or a perfect version of myself. So I was using the principles of insight to become a perfect version of me. So I really crashed when I had a period of depression that I couldn't get myself out of, and really showed me that I still had some ideas of how I needed to be a perfect human being. So in a way, hitting a low point and a depression was the perfect for me, because it had me see beyond the depression. And I had got myself a belief somewhere without realizing it that I needed to be a perfect human who never went low and always was up. And so when I hit this depression, it was really confronting because I was like, how can I know all of this and then be going low? And then I saw it, that the depression was caused by nothing else than resisting it and expecting it not to be there. And the minute I gave it space, it lifted. Going up and down is a normal thing in the world, highs and lows. All of it is normal. And where we run into trouble is when we give it significance and we add thinking or we believe it to be true, and then we make it real. So I think that for me was a really low moment, but it was a blessing in disguise because it helped me see beyond the depression and it helped me bounce back. And when I bounced back, I was then able to know what I could trust. I could trust my innate resilience. I could trust that the depression was the ephemera, was the not real. This more neutral, calm, clear mind that had intuitive wisdom, that was the real.
Stepping back and looking at what life was like for you before you began this practice and integrated all of this learning, compared with what life is like for you now, how would you describe the change?
I'd say more real. I have less judgment about myself and others. I still have it, but I don't judge it when I do. There's more flow. There's a significant amounts of more resilience in terms of bouncing back from anything, moods or frustrations. And there's a lot more faith in life and what I know I can trust.
That must feel quite nice.
We're either at home or away on the inside. So when we're away, we use words like I'm in my head, I'm overthinking. And we know what it's like when we're in a busy mind. We've got ping, 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 lots of things going on in our head. One thought leads to another. There's a lot of mental activity. And what goes along with a lot of mental activity is a feeling of anxiety or pressure or stress. And so a busy mind, even though we think we're being productive because we're having lots of thoughts, is actually counterproductive. So a busy mind has the qualities of feeling driven, urgent, anxious, stressed. We don't always catch that we've got a busy mind, but we often catch the feeling. That's a little sign to say we're not necessarily in our right mind. We're caught up with a lot of thought, busy-minded thought, and that busy-minded thought has created a tension and a feeling of stress. When we're at home, we feel light, easy, open, flexible, able to meet whatever comes, resourceful, clear, in the flow. This needs to be done right now. That's a sign that you've got a lot of thinking about something. When we're feeling relaxed and easy, that is the space where insight and intuition and wisdom can be heard. There's a lightness, there's a clarity, there's a simplicity, there's an ease in our being, and we hear wisdom. Now, it's possible to hear wisdom even when we're caught up in our thinking, but it does tend to speak in a softer voice. So we're less likely to hear it when we've got a lot of noise, you could say, in our head. But when we're settled and think of it like a snow globe. When we've shaken the snow globe and we've got a lot going on, it's not so easy to see clearly. But when it settles, there's a space for our insight, what's inside to be heard.
With all of the experiences that you've had and all of the lessons that you've learned along the way, is there anything now that you would say to your younger self?
Yeah, I've thought about this question many times over the years. I think I would say to my younger self, there is nothing lacking, any more than there's anything lacking in a flower or a tree or a dolphin. They're just being themselves. And that's all you need to be as well. And any time that you catch yourself in any kind of low mood, you want to know that that's not your real self. So the feeling of the low mood is a sign that your thinking is off track, not that you are off track. Because you can never be off track. Because the part of you that is you is guided by the very same life force that turns the bud into a flower. It's guiding you to turn you into the flower of you. And you don't even have to do anything. Just like the flower doesn't have to do anything to become the flower. It just grows. So you have that capacity within you to get out of your own way and just listen in for that natural flowering in you. And you can recognize it because its feeling is light and clear and neutral and without any attachment in it. It just feels like the natural next thing. When you're in that place where the natural next thing wants to happen, you trust it. That inner guide can never take you off path.
How you're living life now, do you think you are living life the way that your younger self would have designed it?
Well, yeah, because everything I've ever dreamed of, I've done. So I've traveled the world and I've had kids and I've found the love of my life, and I lived in 3 foreign countries. I now live in southern Spain in the sun. I had my own business. I work with leaders. I think my battles were always internal and battling my moods. I think that was the thing that my younger self didn't know what to do about. And really, it's taken me quite a long time. I looked in all the wrong places. I looked outside of myself. But I think from where I am now, I would say that my younger self would be very pleased to know that I have found a way to be with myself as I am in all my glorious highs and lows. And I know what direction to look in to find peace.
What do you think your younger self would say to you now?
Do you know what comes up is, didn't you do well? That's what comes up.
Nice.
Didn't you do well? And I don't know whether this is my older self or my younger self, but it's probably the self that is always there witnessing is ageless. So in a sense, that's kind of where this answer is coming from. It's coming from the self that has always been there. So it was there when I was younger and is there now. And that self is saying, just enjoy every little thing that you can. That's why we're here.